Hello?
Hey, this is Daniel.
Hey, how are you, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Good. Thanks for hopping on here tonight.
Hey, you bet.
I guess just for people out there listening to this, got connected with you through Turf's Up Radio, and that's just a radio station that we're both kind of a part of, and specific to the green industry. But yeah, Turf's Up Radio is how we got together, and just decided, hey man, this guy, he seems like an interesting guy. I know him maybe a little bit, but not too much. So, have him on, get to talk to him a little bit.
Well, hey, I appreciate the invite. And no, I agree. I know Turf's Up Radio, I've seen it just grow since the time that I've been here, right? I know Darren had it going long before I showed up. But yeah, it's not only for the green industry, but you're right. I mean, there's a lot of shows on the channel that talk about just how to grow your business in general, just share, years of knowledge and experience. So it's been great.
If you just want to start out, tell us a little bit about you, kind of maybe a little bit of your background, who you are, where you're from, maybe just a little bit to get the ball rolling.
Okay. So I'll make this as brief as I can. So I was born in Salt Lake and joined the Utah Army National Guard way back in '93 and went off to basic training and AIT and jump school, came back, and I had a couple of years of college already, so I immediately contracted out with ROTC at the University of Utah and ended up graduating 2 years later, got my commission as an infantry officer in the Army, went active duty for about 5 years, and then got out, went into corporate America, worked for a company called Lutron, and then I ended up going back on active duty. I was called back to command a company that was deployed to Iraq in 2004, 2005. So that with all the total time that I was away, it was about 18 months away from my civilian job. So after that, I went back to Lutron, and they moved me around a lot. Between the military and how many times I've moved with my regular job, I think I've moved 19 times. Wow. So I've lived in Utah, California, Pennsylvania, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of other locations. But yeah, so now I've been married for about 26 years. I have 3 daughters. All of them are grown and either graduated from college or well on their way to doing that. And, I've worked in a few different professions. I've done, lighting control, audio visual integration, and now doing some stuff with TotalScape, with the custom pools, landscape design, and just, smart home integration. So it's been really interesting. It's been a great ride. I've had a chance to see and work in a lot of different industries, which has been good for me. I think it gives me kind of a unique perspective on some aspects anyway. I'm certainly not an expert. Like, your dad is a true expert in what he does. And, I don't know if I'm really an expert in anything, but I've got a good broad knowledge, and, I've had a chance to work in many different positions. So I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like you have a very broad background of, different experiences, different locations, getting to see a lot, experience a lot. And then obviously with the military, getting to really experience a whole new world when it comes to just how some people live, how some people have it compared to us. So it's definitely a wide variety of things. But
yeah, I had a chance. I did some time in Mexico, Korea, Haiti, and Kuwait, and then also Iraq. So,
man,
been all over the place and seen good, bad, ugly, as they say.
Yeah. So going back to maybe a little bit before your college days, was the military always on your radar, or what kind of got you into that?
It really never was. My dad was in the Utah Guard forever. He retired out as a colonel. He was the head of selective service for the state. So he was always involved in it growing up, but I never saw myself as the military type. Never went out back and played soldier or anything like that. And then just one day I decided that, I wanted to try it. I wanted to go do something, and I really wanted to go to jump school. So there was a unit in Utah that gave me a chance to do that. So I joined up, and my dad told me, he said, why don't you just start out in the National Guard, and if you love it, you can always go deeper. If you don't, then you can serve your time honorably and get out. So I started with that and came back from my initial training that I talked about, and I just loved it. So that's when I decided to go the ROTC route and go active duty and make it a career for a while.
So growing up,
it was great.
So growing up, were you really? You said you weren't kind of into the whole military aspect early, but what were you into? Were you like athletic? What were you kind of into as a kid?
Yeah, I always loved sports. Loved basketball, baseball, golf primarily. Spent a ton of time doing that in high school and just recreationally for fun. So I was always athletic. And, I don't know if that helped lead me to the military or not. It really was just, I don't know if there was one thing that pushed me in that direction. I don't know what it was. Because my dad never pressed me at all. He just said, if you want to do it, you got to go in there and do it the right way. Gotcha. And I think that was probably one of the things that was the key to success for me is I never was pressured to do it. It was my decision, and I could do it on my own terms.
And, as far as the military goes, whether it's accurate or not, I think a lot of people have this mindset outside the military that a lot of kids going in, it's maybe either like a last choice or it's to get them out of a troublesome situation. Mm-hmm. Did you see a lot of that going in, or is it more just kind of a stereotype?
I think primarily it's a stereotype. There certainly is some of that, without a doubt. I'm sure there's a lot of people in a lot of different areas across the country where that's just a great option for them to get out, start a career, get some training, and then see where it goes for them. I mean, that definitely happens. But I also saw just some of the sharpest people I've ever met in my life. And a lot of these people have gone on to Ivy League educations, and they're running businesses. I mean, huge businesses. So it was a very broad mix, but that was one of the most unique and interesting things about the military. You would meet young people, old people, and people from all different races, religion, and hometowns all across the country. So it was an education just in and of itself, just associating and getting to know those people and working with them.
And as a kid, or maybe in your teens, did you find yourself becoming or having the characteristics of maybe like an adrenaline junkie or something like that? You said you were very interested in jump school. I didn't know if maybe it was like an adrenaline thing or what that was.
Yeah, I think at some point I realized I wanted to do, I don't know what you'd call it, something unique or something cool or something that would push me a little bit. And once I got a taste of that, I just couldn't get enough. That's what made me, decide to branch as an infantry officer. And it gave me access to other schools, Air Assault School, Ranger School, things like that. I couldn't get enough. Yeah, I still am to this day. I'm an adrenaline guy.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know if that'll ever fully leave my system.
Is there anything specific that just like attracted you to the military? Like, was it the culture? Was it the discipline of it? What if there was anything specific that was like, this is something that I can really get into? I think a lot of people kind of are a lot different in that aspect, where the military would just not be a good fit. Was it something that you found to be like a naturally good fit?
Yeah, for me it was, but you really touched on something there. And I've had a lot of people come to me over the years, either, kids that are looking to get in or parents of kids that are looking to get in. And I've given them a lot of advice. And I've told everybody that it can be the best decision or the worst decision of your life. You have to know what you're signing up for, right? And you have to be willing to sacrifice. And it's not an easy lifestyle. But, to answer your question, I don't know if, aside from the adrenaline thing and just wanting to do something unique that I thought was more than just a paycheck, I guess. It had a higher calling to it. That's what got me in. But what really kept me in and kept me, coming back on and off for 15 years was the camaraderie. And it never felt like a job to me. And, my wife and I were laughing about this the other day. I couldn't even tell you what I made per year, the first few years. We had enough to eat. I never even really thought about that. Every day was exciting. You literally couldn't wait to wake up and go to work.
Yeah.
And there was always something to look forward to. A deployment or your next duty assignment or a promotion or another school that you could go to, because they were always giving you opportunities to go to different schools and expand your knowledge. and just do, interesting things. So I really loved it, but I definitely saw some people that it wasn't a good fit for them for, a host of reasons. Either they weren't disciplined enough, or they weren't good at just taking orders from people and playing the game. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's no different than even the civilian world, right? Certain jobs just aren't a fit for people either. So maybe it's the same. I don't know.
And when you describe it, it sounds like kind of like almost like a more free, or more like, I guess even more like dangerous version of childhood, in a way where you just don't think necessarily about those things that we think about when we become adults. It's like, oh, I have a roof over my head and I have food in my belly, so I'm good to go. What's the next adventure? It sounds almost like a little bit of a childhood adventure almost.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to say it. We used to joke in Iraq, and I'm not saying this to try to act like a tough guy, not at all. We used to joke with one another and say, this is a great job. The only thing you have to worry about every day is maybe getting killed. And I don't want to be flippant about it, because unfortunately, tragically, a lot of people have. But your body kind of naturally adjusts to that fear over time, and just allows you to focus on your job. And then a lot of the other aspects of military life, at least for me, were very enjoyable. I really loved my time in the service.
So when you talk about that military life, is there something that you like as an outsider, you would have no idea, like, oh, this goes on like an everyday basis? Is there something like that? Or is it kind of like what you see in the movies? Like what's the real story of just the everyday kind of grind?
Yeah, no, it's not like the movies. The thing I guess that surprised me, it's the expression everybody used to say, it's hurry up and wait. There's a lot of downtime, and there's a lot of planning, and it's meticulous, and it's not glamorous, it's not exciting, and there's a lot of preparation, there's a lot of maintenance of equipment, and a lot of personal study. You were always studying things on your own to be better at your job, because academically there was a lot to learn. So yeah, it's not at all like, I guess in some movies are accurate. When you get into a firefight, some movies do a pretty good job with some aspects of it. But in many ways, the military, it's not glamorous, and there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of preparation time, and it's not the most enjoyable time. But the camaraderie kind of gets you through it. And when I look back, it's almost hard to remember some of those bad times or boring times. You just kind of remember the good.
You talked about like taking personal responsibility of like learning more and doing that kind of thing. Was that something that you enjoyed, or is that something that you kind of had to like really learn to kind of take that initiative to up your own game?
I'd say both. I definitely had to step it up and become better personally. There are a lot of things that I needed to learn. Some things became very natural to me. Other things, I had to work much harder at just to become proficient at. But the one thing, one of the main things that the military taught me is how to work with people as a team. And obviously, I went the officer route, and I was fortunate. I had a lot of enlisted people in my units that had a wealth of knowledge, and they really helped me out a lot, and I helped them out a lot. And it was very much a team effort. And you could make a mistake in the military, you would own it, you'd get chewed out for it, and then it would be forgotten. You'd move on. I don't see that a whole lot in corporate America.
Yeah.
A lot of people get offended,
right.
Things like that. But no, I really leaned on my non-commissioned officers, the NCOs. And I was so lucky to have the group of guys that I served with over the years that really helped me to become a much better version of myself than I would have otherwise.
So as an officer, what are there any, just simple like lifestyle amenity benefits to being an officer versus being just enlisted?
You get paid a little bit more, obviously, but lifestyle wise, aside from that, it's two different routes. It's almost like thinking of, a football team. Everybody's got to play their position well if you're going to be successful. Just some guys choose to play one position, some guys want to play another.
Gotcha.
I don't know if there's a better way to describe it than that. And no one person is more important than the other. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's so true. You need everybody, and everybody's got to be good at their job. And you draw motivation from people at all different levels. during different times. Sometimes they're picking you up and vice versa. So they taught me how to work as a team for sure.
And as somebody in the U.S. military going to a place like Iraq, what is that feeling like? Just being among somebody, people from another culture, and I'm sure it just depends, where you are and who it is. But do you feel when you go out? Do you feel almost different in a way? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, you're different just because obviously when you go to a country like that, just the culture is so different.
Even just being looked at, Oh
yeah, you get looked at. I mean, you definitely stand out, and obviously a lot of just the regular Iraqi people, right? The citizens there, they didn't want anything bad to happen, and we didn't either. They were just innocent victims in the whole thing, caught in the middle, and they would look at you, and you could see that they were afraid. They didn't know, what would happen. So, you try to be good to them and smile at them, wave at them, give them water or food when you could, if you had it to spare, things like that. But no, there was never a feeling of, hey, we're better than you, and we're here to show you the way. That's not how I felt anyway.
Gotcha. So, do you think that the cultural and language barriers just even added even more of a pressure level to it that you might not have if just one of those factors was similar to America?
Probably for some guys they felt that way. For me, it was a little more natural just because I had been in several other countries before. So I was used to working with a translator or trying to pick up a little bit of the language and navigate through that. And then really the nature of what we did, I didn't necessarily have the type of a mission where I had to interact with the locals up close and personal on a daily basis. I mean, we did occasionally, but we did a lot of escort missions, personal protection missions, convoy security, and just various other stuff. So I didn't have the type of mission where I was really embedded walking around talking to people every day, all day. So my experience was a little bit unique in that regard.
Gotcha. What kind of physical training did you do specifically when you're actually over in another country? Is it a different thing than when you're back here?
It is, yeah. When you're not deployed, it's very structured, and it's definitely a set regimen every week. So, you may do weights 2 or 3 times a week, and then you definitely run Monday, Wednesday, Friday. One day is going to be a long, slow run. Then one day was going to be a shorter, high intensity, and then you may do sprints or some other type of cardio on that third day. But when you're in combat, because you have missions going on with different platoons in your company at different hours of the day, people kind of fall back more into just doing physical training on their own. And believe me, everybody did. We had a state-of-the-art gym. We ate well. So a lot of guys were definitely hitting the weights and doing a lot of cardio over there. So I think everybody left probably in the best shape of their life.
Wow, man, that sounds... Just personally being in the fitness world, that sounds like that one microcosm.
That's your heaven.
That would sound like a heaven to me.
And you know what? You had hours every day that you could do that.
Man,
guys they'd go work out for an hour or two. They'd do it, and they'd do some cardio or a road march or whatever. So yeah, you would have loved it.
Was there a constant feeling of threat and just constant adrenaline even when you weren't on a specific mission?
No, you kind of get used to it. I mean, the first few times you roll out on mission and then you come back, you can just feel it drain from your body, and it's almost like you just crash. But yeah, I don't know what it is, if it's a mental thing or if it's a physiological reaction. But after a while, I think your body just doesn't want to deal with that anymore. So you almost get to a point where you just shut it off, and then it becomes pretty much routine. I mean, there's definitely times you're going to get the blood's going to be going and the adrenaline's pumping, and there was always a threat. But a lot of it, you just kind of adapt, and it becomes your new normal after a few weeks. And for the most part, you get used to it. But again, everybody had a different experience over there. That's kind of how it was for me.
Gotcha. And did you find that for yourself or maybe other people when they talked about, was it that whenever you get used to that, do you find yourself almost not fully processing those like the emotions of that, and then having, maybe without even knowing it, like mental, not necessarily problems, but like mental like something holding you back mentally?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think everybody handled it in a different way. Some guys would just pour themselves into exercise. Some guys would just, I don't know if you selectively forget things, or, a lot of guys would jump on the internet at night. Some guys were taking college courses at night just to distract their minds. Some guys definitely, you could tell it was bothering them more than others. So you try to counsel them up and just talk through everything on a nightly basis, just to help people deal with it. But, my first sergeant had deployed 4 times before he went to Iraq with me, and he told me, do you have any, parting words of wisdom? He said, you probably won't really understand how you are going to deal with this for a few years, and then it'll kind of hit you. So, to this day, I'm still kind of an adrenaline junkie, and, I'm sure there's things that I'm very different in some ways, I guess, but I guess my way of coping with it is you just bury it and move on.
Gotcha.
The best you can. But yeah, I'm sure everybody is affected on some level.
And do you think that, like, from the time when you really just got into the military to when you got out, did you see any major changes as far as like even physical and like mental health go, like from what they were recommending or trying to pass along?
No, I didn't. But remember, I was over there in 2004. So that was after the initial invasion. That was 2003 to 4. So we were the second group that went in, and that was right about the time that all the roadside bombs started to come on the scene. And that was devastating. The amount of damage that it would do, to people and convoys, and it was a threat that you couldn't see as well as just people shooting at you, and you never knew where it was going to come from. So I think the psychological effects or the potential damage to somebody probably, started to intensify a little bit from that point on. So I was kind of on the front end of that. And since I didn't go back, I wasn't really sure, what it looked like from the soldiers' perspective and what the Army did to, kind of help out the soldiers and help them cope. Because, some of these service members, they've deployed, multiple times, right? I mean, right. 6, 7, 8 times. So,
wow.
I mean, those people, yeah, they have seen so much more than I did. And, what has the Army done for them? What are the effects on them? Boy, I think it just varies tremendously from one person to the next.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, the point you kind of brought up a little bit about just the way that the war was and, was fought. And it seems like we're in this era now of just a whole different kind of war. It's like, you take it back to maybe the First World War, the Second World War, just issues where you're dealing with it head on, like, soldier to soldier instead of the guerrilla warfare kind of approach. Do you think
right.
that, like, do you think that that's the way of the future, or what do you think, like, war has turned into? Do you think it's just that way now?
Yeah, I think for the most part, unless in the future we get pulled into some kind of a major conflict with, China or Russia, or a major power with a significant conventional, threat to the United States, then yeah, I think it will be more of a low intensity conflict. They call it a guerrilla type, because that's really the only way to fight the United States at this point. If you're a smaller country or, a terrorist organization, whatever, there's just no way you could take us on, head to head. It's just, we just have too many people, too much technology, and too much training.
Yeah.
So you fight that guerrilla style warfare. That's the most effective way to try to hurt us.
Do you think that this style we're learning and adapting to and getting better at, do you think that's potentially harmful as far as if we did get into a major conflict, that we didn't forget it, but we're just not used to that kind of fighting? Do you think that would be harmful?
I know that. I guess the answer, I would say no. I think the military's done a really good job, because when guys come off deployment, they still have to go back and certify on all of the tasks and the vehicles and the weapon systems to fight conventionally as well. So obviously they're always trying to stay up to speed on the latest and greatest, doctrine and tactics and procedures. But no, the military, I can speak for the Army. I think they're doing a really good job making sure that people stay proficient at both.
Yeah, because I feel like it's just, and I'm not obviously like a historian or anything, but just from listening to some podcasts and hearing kind of firsthand stories, it's definitely so much different than that kind of traditional
it is.
fighting.
No, it is, and I know a lot of your listeners would completely disagree with my statement, and I get it. I understand their argument. I do, but I think we could adapt pretty quickly if we needed to go back to more of a traditional, conventional type fight, which I don't even know if we'll ever see that again. Who knows?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It seems like the warfare is almost like is completely different now. Just even if you throw out just the way that we're fighting physical wars, just like the mental warfare game and the sly moves and all these things, it's and I know those things were, around for centuries, but it seems like that's like the main move now is that kind of move.
Yeah, cyber warfare is huge, and even people were laughing when now there's a space force, right?
Right.
And I don't know exactly what that'll look like in the future, but yeah, we just have so much of our technology, it's in orbit. If you shut down some of those communication satellites or various other types, surveillance satellites, that's a big deal. You can knock out communications, and that makes it very difficult to fight. So, yeah, that in many ways, and even financially, right? Economically, that could be the main battlefield of the future.
Yeah. Seems like we're kind of in that right now, a little economic warfare with what's going on right now.
We sure are. And people, you think about like the power grids, if you shut that down, or just the way we purify water, if you get into the computer systems and you mess around with that, or if you, switch around transit for, trains or, dams, hydro stuff, it's pretty crazy, in theory, the kind of damage that somebody could do to us. So,
yeah,
I know cyber's a big deal.
Yeah, there's so much private knowledge too, outside of the military, outside of the government that is out there when it comes to the cyber world that it doesn't take a army of people. It takes maybe a few really intelligent people to do these kind of things, and it's kind of crazy to think when you can take on, a whole community, a whole city, a whole country with just a few people.
I know. It's crazy. You hear about it. The stuff we hear about on the news, I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg. It would be fascinating to find out what's really going on.
Yeah, definitely. It would. It'd probably be a little scary to know the full details behind it.
Yeah, I'm sure it would. Absolutely.
So when you got out of the military, did you see yourself struggling in any part of like just getting back to a normal lifestyle?
I was pretty fortunate because the company that I hired on with, Lutron, they had a history of hiring a lot of, ex-military people, and they had a great training program. They brought us in. So you serve a lot of men and women, or you work with a lot of men and women who had served previously. So during that year-long training program that they put us through in Pennsylvania, it was really a nice way to kind of acclimate and get used to the military or the civilian world while having military people around you to kind of help with that transition. So I think I was very lucky in that sense, because a lot of people probably just got thrown into, what I would call a regular type of corporate America company that maybe didn't have that type of demographic mix, and that may have been more of an adjustment for them.
So you said that they had a lot of veterans and stuff in there. Did that make it? And at the beginning, you kind of mentioned just the culture of like more sensitivity within the world, just the workplace and everywhere. So did that transition almost feel like more natural, and like there was maybe less of that kind of thing going on at that kind of company than maybe your average company at that time?
Oh, you mean just like people getting offended or things like that.
Right. Which I know, like, that was a decent amount of time ago, and it wasn't maybe as
Right.
prevalent, but I still feel like there was maybe some level of it.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a bit of a learning curve there. Just you had to, I guess, learn how to just communicate a little bit differently, right? Because in the military, you can be very blunt and direct, and that's encouraged. You're taught to almost function that way, and so yeah, you have to soften it up a little bit in corporate America. And I don't mean that in an extreme way, but yeah, it's just you're working with so many people who never came from that background. So you had to be sensitive to that and just learn a different way to communicate a little bit. But I wouldn't say it was like, black and white, completely different. It was just a little bit of a modification of what I was used to.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like it would be kind of just, and the only way I can kind of compare it is like going from living at home and hanging out with friends and everything, and then going to college where I went. I was away from home. I didn't really see my family or talk to them that much, and I didn't know one single person when I got to my my new college, and it was definitely like a culture shock. So yeah, right. I can just imagine going from the military back to the civilian world, how it would maybe be a little bit of that as well. Yeah,
there definitely was, but again, I was lucky that I went to work for those guys because we worked hard and we played hard, just like the military. So there were long days. You were expected to do a lot and produce. And so I guess the transition for me was just way more gradual. It was just easier than what I guess a lot of other people may have gone through.
I think it's about perspective, a lot of different perspectives out there. So do you think as a veteran and just maybe the different experiences you had within your life so far, do you think that gives you a much different perspective of this country and maybe of the world as a whole than other people may have?
Yeah, good question. I think it probably does. I think it would have to. Just again, I think the world, not in a depressing way, but it's a darker place than it was before I served in the military, because you've seen some horrible things, or you've seen like true poverty. When you see people living in the poorest conditions you could ever imagine, I think it has an effect on you. I think it changes you. So I guess in some ways I'm very grateful for what we have here, probably more so than the average person who maybe hasn't had a chance to see that and can't fully appreciate it. I guess in that respect it has.
Yeah, I think it's just it's so crazy when it's not that some people here, a lot of people here may not have a challenging life and stuff like that, but when you can count on a lot of times your government to be there, or even just your community to be there, or even just and just as in a weird way, I heard this one time, but even just like the sidewalk to be there and not blow up when you walk down it, is just such a thing. Like all these things we just take for granted.
Yeah, you don't realize the importance of a construction permit or building codes. Just little stuff like that. When you go to another country, you see people just construct things wherever they want. There's no standard. There's really not a whole lot of safety considerations that go into play. There's not a good plan for how to take care of trash, sanitation, sewer lines. It's horrific. It really is. So yeah, I mean, we're certainly not perfect. The government's not perfect by any means, but I'll tell you what, having been in several locations across the world, I would definitely much rather be here than anywhere I've ever been.
Yeah. I think a lot of people lose sight of how good we do have it. Even at some of the lowest levels, we still are just kicking butt in comparison to most places. But in kind of another way thinking about it, do you think that like being in the military, in your own experience, has in any way hindered any specific life experiences that maybe would have been different if you weren't in?
Ooh, that's a good one. Boy, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. You stumped me on that. I've never heard anybody ask that question.
Like anything you may
I guess the answer would be yes, right? I mean, if I hadn't gone that route, I would probably be a different individual, and I may have fallen into a different profession. Maybe I would have stayed, and that would have led to different opportunities. And maybe I'd have millions of dollars in the bank. I don't know. Who knows? So I guess the answer is yes, but boy, I wouldn't even know how to answer that. I wouldn't. You stumped me.
What was I going to say? I was going to say something about that.
Did you ever think about going in, or did you have friends that were in college with you that ended up going into the military? What was your perspective on it?
To me, I would, I really had an admiration for the military, and not necessarily like growing up as a little kid. I wouldn't say, because I wasn't exposed to it really, but just growing up and learning about it and hearing about it, maybe from people around and podcasts and stuff like that. Like, I feel like I definitely would be interested, but unfortunately I can't go in. Like, I wouldn't accept me physically.
Right.
But yeah, definitely. Like, that's something I always said, at least I would have liked to attempted to do something like that.
I've had a lot of people say, I wish I would have, but I'm not really sure that it would have been for me. I'm like, no, you would have done great. And then that's what I think, I think that's what makes America unique as well. I mean, believe me, if the country ever needed to call on us, you'd be there. So would I. I think a lot of people would. So
if you didn't go into the military, what direction? I mean, we kind of said you really wouldn't know, but did you have any like, oh, I really wanted to become this when I was a kid, or like astronaut, or like basketball playing king in space or whatever? Did you have any like secondary option or plan or dream?
I thought a lot about law school. I always had an interest in that. My dad was a lawyer in his civilian employment, so I always loved the aspects of the law. And then international business was always interesting to me. And I was close to applying to a school down in Arizona that specialized in international business. And I think that would have been interesting as well. So I think I would have gone one of those two routes. I don't think I could have done the medical thing. I don't think I wouldn't have had the patience and probably the work ethic for that. At least the study habits anyway, I should say.
Is it kind of maybe some similarities between like military, not necessarily military life, but like what the military experience can be like, and just like the international side of that was attractive to you?
It probably was. Yeah. When you say that, I think that probably was it. I guess I had a desire on some level to go out and see more than, just my hometown, right? Travel the world a little bit and learn and just see some different cultures. So yeah, I bet it was closely related to that, or tied into it anyway.
Kind of getting back to like when not necessarily you get out or when you got out of the service, but like when soldiers, veterans, they're out of the service, they're kind of trying to adjust to normal life. Do you feel like in any way that they're like almost set up for failure, or are at maybe an extreme disadvantage when they do come home and try to like assimilate back?
Well, you know what? Again, I'll bet you could argue this on both sides, but I would say no, just because they're from what I've seen, from my perspective only, there were so many companies that recognized that you had different experiences and some leadership experience. You were used to being responsible and manage a certain number of people, maintain property and equipment. You had to do extensive planning. You would coach and mentor people. So you kind of got an HR education, kind of a planning, management, leadership. So I think a lot of companies, from what I've seen, they really welcome the military background. And there are so many organizations that will help, people getting out of the military transition into corporate America. So I would almost think it would be an advantage, but I guess that varies from company to company. I don't know what the perception is today as we speak of a combat vet that has done multiple deployments. I don't know if people would be hesitant or concerned to hire somebody like that, or if they would still think it was a positive. I would think they would think, is it a positive, or it's a positive, but I don't know.
It's interesting because it seems like you were talking about there's so many of those like private company programs out there to help get vets in because they are maybe valued at a pretty good level, and there's just these certain opportunities, whether that be private or through the government.
Right.
But why do you think that? Is it just like those either maybe outliers or just the struggles, the hardships of being in the military that lead to when we see like and hear about the homeless, veterans and drug addicted and all these things, do you think it's just the hardship and the mental side of it?
I don't know. I'm certainly not an expert on that. And I think it would be interesting too. I think the statistic that I heard is less than 0.5% of the American population is actually served in the military. So it would be interesting to know the statistics and say, okay, is the unemployment rate or the homeless rate or the suicide rate significantly higher for that demographic versus the general population? I mean, I don't know. It may be. I just don't know. And I can tell you what, it doesn't matter if you've been in the military or not. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. Everybody has stuff that they deal with, right? It just comes in so many different shapes and sizes. So I don't know. I don't know if it's significantly worse for vets or not. I don't know.
Do you think
what would you think?
Personally,
would you think that it is?
I don't. Here's my thought. I think maybe it's played upon a little bit by each side of the political table to play on the emotions. Maybe that's how I see it. It's maybe not dramatized to like undervalue it, but maybe it's dramatized as far as like the true numbers that are really out there.
Yeah. I don't know. We should get an expert on to throw out the stats, figure that one out. It's a great question. Did you have all these written down? You're throwing some great questions out.
I have so many different questions really when it comes to this kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, no, man. I really appreciate you having me on the show. I do. This has been great. I don't get a chance to talk much about it, so hopefully it's somewhat interesting on some weird level.
No, I think it is. So, but if you don't mind, just maybe like a question or two more, just to kind of tie things up. So I was curious how you, and you maybe mentioned at the beginning, but so don't feel like I'm paying attention. But how did you get into the green industry, and why did you find that this was an attractive industry for you?
Yeah, so that first company that I hired on with Lutron, they're the world leader in lighting control. And since I hired on way back when with them, they've expanded their product offering. So they not only do lighting controls, but they do, lighting as well. So whenever you are dimming the lights or controlling the lighting with their technology, you're actually reducing the amount of energy you consume, as well as, making your environment a little more aesthetically appealing. So that's what really initially got me into the green sector, saving energy. And then just in my professional career since starting with them, I've worked in so many different aspects of the green industry, everything from protecting the environment during the construction process or tying in with building automation systems to reduce your HVAC and heating, consumption, energy consumption. So it's interesting how so many different industries are somehow, some way connected to the green sector. So I knew I had an interest in it. I would never consider myself to be an environmentalist, and not just the same as I didn't consider myself to be the military type. But I just kind of fell into it, and I think it's a good thing. It brings a lot of value, and on the side, it also affords somebody an opportunity to have a nice business and make a good, solid living. So that's kind of how I got into it.
When it comes to veterans, and I know you do a little bit of work with that. Can you share a little bit about the vet stuff you do?
You bet. So there's a couple of things. With Turfs Up Radio, we have the email site. It's Jobs for Vets. So jobs and then FOR, not the number. So jobs for vets at turfsupradio.com. If you're a veteran transitioning or you've already gotten out and you're looking to get into the green industry, in particular, lawn care or landscaping, lawn care, landscape design, things like that. We try to get your resume and then see if we can mirror you up with a company in your area that may be looking to hire. So we don't take a fee for that, and we certainly can't guarantee anybody a job. But what we can guarantee is that we'll do our best to connect with people that may be looking to hire. So that's one thing we do, or that I do. And the other thing is I'm an advisor with a veterans nonprofit called Together for the Good. And they basically serve military spouse or military veterans, first responders, and their family members through a variety of different programs, counseling, groups, support groups that meet. They do all kinds of events just to support that community. So I've always tried to stay connected to that and do what I can to help out and give back a little bit.
Yeah, that's really cool to be able to give back like that. I'll definitely add the links to those things in the description to this podcast. So just trying to.
Will do. I'll send them to you. Send them to you right now. No, I would appreciate that. That's great.
Yeah, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking to me tonight. It was good to really get to talk to you. We kind of talked to, I guess, a little bit to each other on Weekend Review occasionally, but never really got to, I guess, kind of dig deeper into. So it was nice to do that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks again for the invite.
Absolutely, man. Alrighty, and that was Brooke Ford. Very broad range of experiences with the military and with the corporate world and just all the stuff he has going on. So definitely check the links down below if you're a veteran. If you have any needs of the sort that we talked about, go check the links. And other than that, just make sure you're subscribed to the Weight Room. We have, we have tons of stuff coming out, so don't miss out. And other than that, that is it for today's episode. I'm out.